a very small correction to what I said yesterday. It's not a very important point. If you don't remember what I said yesterday, it doesn't matter. I said the first occurrence of the word Ashwapati is on page 469. That's what I said yesterday, I think. Sorry, I said it was on 369. But you'll be happy to know that there are very keen readers of Savitri here in the audience. And somebody said, maybe there is an earlier occurrence, and he was correct. The first occurrence, in fact, is on page 341. It comes as Ashwapatis, not as Ashwapati, but Ashwapati apostrophe. Yes, it comes on 341, about 10 lines, 12 lines from the top. But Ashwapati's heart replied to her. That's where the first occurrence of Ashwapati is. And of course, I was referring to its occurrence on page 369, not of any great consequence, but I thought if you had made that note and make use of it, even a small error shouldn't just be broadcast like that, so correction. It's very interesting that the word Savitri or Savitris occurs about 90 times in the whole epic, Satyavan about 80 times, but Ashwapati only about 6-7 times, 5-6 times I guess. I often wondered why, because he writes about 360 pages exclusively about Ashwapati. First 3 books are all about Ashwapati. And the other interesting thing is, Sri Aurobindo doesn't seem to have made up his mind about how best to spell Ashwapati. Sometimes he spells it with T-I, sometimes with T-H-Y. And of course, Ashwapati is a very awkward word for English rhythm. If you know the soul of the English rhythm, Ashwapati, it's a 4-syllable word with stress on the first syllable. Very, very rare. English doesn't have this kind of a syllabic structure at all. So there are many, many reasons. But this I thought just was a kind of diversion. Okay, we now are ready to look at Satyavan and Savitri together, which is on page 400. Now, this morning when I was looking at this canto, my first reaction was one of despair, because there is so much in this canto and we have so little time for this. So we'll have just about enough time to refer to some of these passages, but we won't have time to linger on them, to savor them to our heart's content. But this is what we have chosen to do, so I guess there is no point in complaining about it. If you want to do the whole of Savitri in 24 hours, this is what happens. Something that took Sri Aurobindo 50 years, you and I have 24 hours for. So this is what will happen. So we have already seen how very delicately Sri Aurobindo develops the scene, the events leading to the meeting between Satyavan and Savitri, which is described in Canto 2. In Canto 3, now the god of love has played his role, and Satyavan and Savitri have already felt this instinctive attraction towards each other, and Satyavan is chivalrous enough to initiate the conversation. So he says on page 400, middle of that page, "O thou who comes to me out of time's silences, yet thy voice has wakened my heart to an unknown bliss. Immortal or mortal only in thy frame. So he says, I am confused, I don't know whether you are a mortal or an immortal. If you are a mortal, I assume you are a mortal, but I don't know. When anybody looks at you, one is confused whether you are a being, creature of this earth, or a being of some other planes descended here. For more than earth speaks to me from thy soul, and more than earth surrounds me in thy gaze. Your look is not just an earthly look. When you look at me, I feel that I am surrounded by more than earth. How art thou named among the sons of men? In other words, she simply is asking, what's your name? How art thou named among the sons of men? Whence hast thou dawned, filling my spirit's days, brighter than summer, brighter than my flowers, into the lonely borders of my life, O sunlight, molded like a golden maid. The rest of this whole speech is at that same elevated level. You should read it at leisure and enjoy it. So he is now asking, what's your name? And then on page 401, almost the last line of that page, if our time-vexed affections thou canst feel, earth's ease of simple things can satisfy. If thy glance can dwell content on earthly soil, and this celestial summary of delight, thy golden body dally with fatigue. Says, I don't know whether you belong to this earth, and therefore, like other human beings, your body can feel fatigue, or like gods, you have no fatigue, you never sleep. I don't know. So he says, if you belong to this earth, and if you feel something like fatigue, you have traveled the whole day, you look, then therefore he says, oppressing with its grace our terrain, while thy frail sweet passing taste of earthly food delays thee, and thy torrent sleeping wine descend, let thy journey cease, come down to us. Descend from this chariot, come down to us. Close is my father's creepered hermitage. My father's Jimatsena's hermitage is close by, screened by the tall ranks of these silent kings, sung to by voices of the hue-robed choirs, who chants repeat transcribed in music notes, the passionate colored lettering of thy baths, and fill the hours with their melodious cry. This is what he says. I have read only the beginning and the end. Savitri replies, same page, about 2-3 lines from the bottom. First, she doesn't immediately respond. A while she paused, as if hearing still his voice. It looked as if even after Satyavan stopped speaking, Savitri was inwardly listening to his voice. So she didn't immediately respond. Unwilling to break the charm, then slowly spoke. Musing, she answered, I am Savitri, princess of Madra. I am the daughter of the king of Madra. I am Savitri. Who art thou? What name musical on earth expresses thee to men? What trunk of kings, watered by fortunate streams, has flowered at last upon one happy branch? You must be a prince. What fortunate lineage or royalty do you belong to? Why is thy dwelling in the pathless wood, far from the deeds thy glorious youth demands? When look at you, you have a heroic figure. Why is it that you have made your home in this forest, haunt of the anchorites and earth's wilder broods, where only with thy witness self thou roamst in nature's green, unhuman loneliness, surrounded by enormous silences and the blind murmur of primeval calms. Why are you here? Why are you not in the thick of action, in where human beings try to excel one another, conquer things, conquer kingdoms? You seem to be a hero, young man, but why are you here in the forest? Satyavan, of course, explains to her, same page, in days when yet his sight looked clear on life, King Dyumatsena once the Shalva reigned. Says, I am the son of Dyumatsena, who once upon a time was the king of Shalva. Through all the tract which from behind these tops, passing its days of emerald delight, in trusting converse with the traveller winds, turns looking back towards the southern heavens, and leans its flank upon the musing hills. He is describing the boundary of the kingdom of Shalva. He says, you see those hills? From where the hills begins, he gives a very description of a very huge kingdom, and my father was a king of this kingdom, outcast from empire of the outer light. Same page. First, he was outcast from his empire by outer light. First, he lost his sight, so he became blind. Outcast from empire of the outer light, lost to the comradeship of seeing men, he sojourns in two solitudes, within and in the solemn rustle of the woods. So he has now, because he has lost his eyesight, he lost his kingdom, he has now chosen to live in two solitudes. One is the solitude within, and the solitude that you find in a forest hermitage. So that's where he lives. He sojourns in two solitudes, within and in the solemn rustle of the woods. Son of that king, I, Satyavan, have lived contented, for not yet of thee aware, in my high people loneliness of spirit, and this huge vital murmur kin to me, nursed by the vastness, pupil of solitude. I, the son of this king, and until now, until the moment I met you, I have lived in absolute contentment in the forest. The trees have spoken to me, the clouds and the rains and the rainbow and the birds and the beasts. I have learned many things from nature, and until now I lived in great contentment. But now that you have come, all my contentment has disappeared. It's a beautiful poem of how one can learn from nature, what kinds of things, from the cascades, from the summer heat, from the spring, from the rains. This is a big description right from end of page 403 up to end of page 405 is a detailed description how nature can be your teacher, and how Satyavan says, I have benefited immensely by being in the midst of nature, and I was very, very happy. Page 405, about 5 lines from the bottom. I sat with the forest sages in their trance. There poured awakening streams of diamond light. Not only have I benefited from nature, but I also have benefited from being in the vicinity of great saints and rishis. I have sat by their side when they sit for meditation. There poured awakening streams of diamond light. I glimpsed the presence of the One in all. So because of the influence of these great souls, I have also from time to time felt the presence of the divine in everything, in trees, in beasts, in men. But still there lacked the last transcendent power, and matter still slept empty of its Lord. It's very interesting. Satyavan is now saying, I also have shared some of the spiritual treasures these great rishis have gained. But I still felt that there is one more siddhi, there is one more victory, which is yet to be won. That's why he says, matter still slept, empty of its Lord. I somehow felt matter's journey, matter's progress has not yet reached its destination, its culmination. Matter was still empty of its Lord. The spirit was saved, and everything else is lost. These rishis here, these munis here sit in meditation, find oneness in everything. Their spirit is saved, but everything else is lost. Matter doesn't fulfill itself in this kind of an enterprise. The spirit was saved, the body lost and mute. Here body stands for everything else other than the spirit, what may be called the instruments of the spirit, the mind, the vital energy of man and body. It seemed to me these are born, these live here awaiting their end in death. They don't seem to have any other destination, but find their extinction in death. So while the spirit finds its freedom and merges with the divine, merges with the oneness, ultimate reality, the body that sheltered the spirit, the mind that enabled the spirit to grow, and the life energies. See, man uses the body, life energies and mind like a ladder. And after climbing this ladder up, you find that this ladder has no more use and you kick this ladder. This is what is done. So when body, mind and life energies, you use them, and once you have gone up beyond these, you have no use for them, you just kick this ladder. And therefore he says, matter is still empty of its Lord. The spirit was saved, the body lost and mute, lived still with death and ancient ignorance. The inconscient was its base, the void its fate. So body, mind and life have come from the inconscience, and death seems to be their fate. Void its fate. For some reason he has the intuition. He says, but thou hast come, and all will surely change. Now that you have come, this also will change. I have a confidence. Now that you have come here, even this imperfection will be transcended. I shall feel the world mother in thy golden limbs, and hear her wisdom in thy sacred voice. The child of the void shall be reborn in God. My matter shall evade the inconscient's trance. My matter, my body, and everything else which goes with the body and the instruments of the spirit, I have a belief, I have this faith, intuition in me, that because of your presence, my matter shall evade the inconscient's trance. I shall somehow escape the trance of death. My body, like my spirit, shall be free. So, the spirit's freedom is what I can get from my companionship with the rishis that live in the forest. But I think that freedom is only a partial freedom. There is another freedom, a more glorious freedom, and that is freedom of matter, freedom of the body, freedom of mind, freedom of life energies. And this, he says, my body like my spirit shall be free. It shall escape from death and ignorance. So, he is already suggesting that because Savitri has now come, he hopes to achieve this one last triumph over ignorance and death. And Savitri, musing still, replied to him. I guess most of the time when we talk to people, we are interested in going on talking, not listening to others. Very few of us are good listeners. We just want to go on talking. I guess only when you are in love, you want the other person to speak and you want to keep just listening. So Savitri therefore says, speak more to me, speak more, O Satyavan. Why did you stop? You go on. See, when you speak, it's heavenly music to my ears. And you speak such elevating, wonderful sense. Why do you stop? Speak more to me, speak more, O Satyavan. Speak of thyself and all thou art within. So all this time which I didn't read, Satyavan was expressing his intimate aspirations, his ambition in life. He was talking about his inner life. He says, outer life, all that I need to tell you is I am the son of an exiled king. I have always lived here in the forest. That's all I am. But he was describing his inner aspirations and the kind of rich life he lived in the midst of this, in the midst of the forest, and what he gained from the various companionship, the various rishis and munis, and as we just saw, why he finds even this life incomplete. Therefore he says, speak of thyself and all thou art within. I would know thee as if we had ever lived together in the chamber of our souls. So tell me more and more yourself so that I can feel that you and I have always lived together as souls in the same chamber. Speak till a light shall come into my heart, and my moved mortal mind shall understand what all the deathless being in me feels. It knows that thou art he my spirit has sought. He says, I know, you are he, thou art he whom my spirit has been looking for. It knows that thou art he my spirit has sought amidst earth's thronging visages and forms across the golden spaces of my life. And Satyavan, like a replying harp to the insistent calling of a flute, so the poet describes them as a kind of jugalbandi between a harp and a flute, answered her questioning and let stream to her his heart in many colored waves of speech. O golden princess, perfect Savitri, more I would tell than failing words can speak. I feel I could just go on and on talking to you endlessly of all that thou hast been to me, unknown, all that the lightning flash of love reveals in one great hour of the unveiling gods. Even a brief nearness has reshaped my life. Even this brief nearness, the few moments I have spent in your company, has changed my life. For now I know that all I lived and was moved towards this moment, toward this movement of my heart's rebirth. Now I know. Until I met you, I did not know why I was born. I did not know what I was supposed to do. Now that I have met you, I know exactly why I was born and what I am supposed to do. So meeting you has all of a sudden revealed to me the significance of my life. My life now, for the first time, becomes to me very, very meaningful. That's what she says. For now I know that all I lived and was moved towards this moment of my heart's rebirth. I look back on the meaning of myself, a soul made ready on earth's soil for thee. I am a soul made ready for you. I have come here for you, I have been born for you, and this is again, Savitri also responds in a very, very grand manner. You can read it for yourself. And towards the end of that, page 407, I looked upon the world, this is Satyavan saying, I looked upon the world and missed the self. And when I found the self, I lost the world. See, until now, I had to make a choice. Either I had the soul, and if I got the soul, the truth, inner truth, I had to lose the world. or if I went after the world, I lost track of my soul. So this has been an either or. You either choose matter or you choose spirit. You can't have both. That's why I looked upon the world and missed the self. And when I found the self, I lost the world. My other selves I lost, and the body of God, the link of the finite with the infinite, the bridge between the appearance and the truth, the mystic aim for which the world was made, the human sense of immortality. This is what I have missed until now. But now, the gold link comes to me with thy feet. Now that you have come, you have brought this golden link between the world and the soul. So I don't have to make a choice. Either choose the world or choose your soul. I can have both of them because you have made that link possible. But now the gold link comes to me with thy feet, and his gold sun has shone on me from thy face. For now another realm draws near with thee, and now diviner voices fill my ear. A strange new world swims to me in thy gaze, approaching like a star from the unknown heavens. A cry of spheres comes with thee, and a song of flaming gods. I draw a wealthier breath, and a fierier march of moments move. Goes on, and finally he requests her, same page, descend, O happiness. Savitri, imagine, still is talking to him from the chariot. She's still there. Descend, O happiness, with thy moon gold feet. Enrich earth's floors upon whose sleep we lie. O my bright beauties, Princess Savitri, by my delight and thy own joy compelled, enter my life, thy chamber and thy shrine. In the great quietness where spirits meet, led by my hushed desire into my woods, let the dim rustling arches over thee lean. One with the breath of things eternal live. Thy heart beats near to mine, till there shall leap enchanted from the fragrance of the flowers a moment which all murmurs shall recall, and every bird remember in its cry. It's very difficult to read so much good poetry and digest it. So I'm only reading a little bit here and there so that you won't be swept off as in a flood. 409, Savitri finally says, and she's very brief. Savitri is not the one given to words, it's Satyavan. He speaks a lot. Savitri occasionally, but very often she's very brief. She says, O Satyavan, I have heard thee and I know. I know that thou and only thou art he. That's all she says. I know that thou and only thou art he. Who is this he? The he for whom my father wanted me to come out and look for. Thou art he. Then comes a very beautiful description of Savitri descending from the chariot and then bending down to pick up some flowers. She picks up some flowers and weaves a little garland and puts it on the bosom around the neck of Satyavan. That's the description. This is the scene. So, let us read it. Then down she came from her high carven car, descending with a soft and faltering haste. Her many-hued raiment glistening in the light hovered a moment over the wind-stirred grass. Remember, Savitri wore a many-hued raiment. We are very critical of our young people for wearing many-hued raiment. This is always, young people have always done this, even in Savitri's time. So I don't think we should take a very stiff view of these things. Mixed with the glimmer of her body's ray, like lovely plumage of a settling bird, her gleaming feet upon the green gold sod scattered a memory of wandering beams and lightly pressed the unspoken desire of earth, cherished in her too brief passing by the soil. Then she picks up these flowers. Then flitting like pale brilliant moths, her hands, looks like moths, her hands flitting from one to another, picking up these flowers. Then flitting like pale brilliant moths, her hands took from the sylvan verge's sunlit arms a load of their jewel faces, clustering swarms, companions of the springtime and the breeze. A candid garland set with simple forms. It's a simple garland. It's a candid garland. It's a candid garland set with simple forms. Her rapid fingers taught a flower song. It's as if she was singing a flower song with her rapid fingers, the way she was making this garland. A candid garland set with simple forms. Her rapid fingers taught a flower song, the stanza'd movement of a marriage hymn, profound in perfume and immersed in hue. They mixed their yearnings, colored signs, and made the bloom of their purity and passion one, a sacrament of joy in treasuring palms. She brought flower symbol of her offered life. Then, with raised hands that trembled a little now, some trembling in her hands, then with raised hands that trembled a little now, at the very closeness that her soul desired. The poet is very factual. He says, her hands have now come very close to the soul that she desired. The soul is supposed to dwell in the heart, right? So her hands are very close to the soul. At the very closeness that her soul desired, this bond of sweetness, their bright union sign, she laid on the bosom coveted by her love. She puts this garland on the bosom of Satyavan. As if inclined before some gracious God who has out of his mist of greatness shone to fill with beauty his adorers' hearts. Now what is Satyavan's response? What does Satyavan do? Well, 4 or 5 lines down the page, he bent to her and took into his own their married yearning, joined like folded hopes. So, he took her into his arms as if a whole rich world suddenly possessed, wedded to all he had been, became himself an inexhaustible joy made his alone. He gathered all Savitri into his clasp. Gathered all Savitri into his clasp. He describes this. How does he describe this? 4 or 5 lines down that page. In a wide moment of two souls that meet, she felt her being flow into him as in waves a river pours into a mighty sea. Savitri felt when Satyavan embraced her as if her entire being was pouring into an ocean. When the river feels, when the river is pouring itself into the ocean, that's how Savitri feels. As when a soul is merging into God. So Sri Aurobindo describes it another way. The river pouring itself into the ocean, or if you like, you can also think of it as when a soul is merging into God. To live in Him forever and to know His joy, her consciousness grew aware of Him alone, and all her separate self was lost in His. The entire Savitri felt she didn't exist anymore. She had become a part of Satyavama. As a starry heaven encircles happy earth, he shut her into himself in a circle of bliss and shut the world into himself and her. The very first line on the next page, each now was a part of the other's unity. The world was but their twin self-finding scene, on their own wedded beings' vaster frame. And suddenly, Sri Aurobindo lifts the whole scene in the lines that I am now going to read. On the high glowing cupola of the day, fate tied a knot with morning's halo threads, while by the ministry of an auspicious hour, hard bound before the sun, their marriage fire, the wedding of the eternal Lord and spouse took place again on earth in human forms. He says this is once again the eternal wedding of the eternal Lord of Shiva with Uma, Shiva with Parvati. So like that, once again this wedding was being reenacted. The wedding of the eternal Lord and spouse took place again on earth in human forms, in a new act of the drama of the world. This is simply a new act of the drama of the world. The united two began a greater age. In the silence and murmur of that emerald world, and the mutter of the priest-wind's sacred verse, amid the choral whispering of the leaves, love's twain had joined together and grew one. The natural miracle was wrought once more in the immutable ideal world. One human moment was eternal made. Now it's very difficult to write love poetry like this. Sri Aurobindo makes it, it's all he writes about human love, but the way he handles it, it's unbelievable. And sometimes when I go out and give talks on Savitris, and I find a cluster of young people once in a while in the audience, so I want to assure them that, don't think that Savitri necessarily only means it's poem for tired souls who are thinking of moksha and nirvana and so on. There is plenty here, the whole of life here. He writes about love so much. So it's primarily a love poem. It can be maintained, but love at all levels. This is what Savitri is. And sometimes I make an announcement. Tomorrow I look upon Savitri as a poem of love. Very often I get a note from the audience, please talk to us only about the spiritual aspects of Savitri, as if this is not a spiritual aspect. What is this? We have a funny idea of what is spiritual. Spiritual is making the whole life sacred. That's false. This whole idea. Life is this entire business of life into two parts. One is a dirty part of life and one is a sacred part of life. That is not Indian at all. That's a foreign, borrowed notion. Life is all a sacred thing, and divine's touch can be found in all aspects of life. That's the way life has to be lived. And so, Sri Aurobindo tells us, it's very difficult to write love poetry where you talk about fulfilled love. There is great love poetry, particularly in the West, but it's basically love frustrated. Like Urdu poets, the poet always has to find that the beloved is gone, then his highest poetry comes out. But love fulfilled, for most people, it's sheer domesticity. There is no poetry left. But here you see how he lifts the whole thing. It's made an adoration of the body, adoration of the heart, adoration of the mind. This is the way he handles this. And finally, Now that this is over and I have received the 5-minute note, Savitri says on the same page, very last line, my heart will stay here on this forest verge and close to this thatched roof while I am far. Yes, I have some very important business to attend to. So I'll be gone for a short while, but even when I am gone, my heart will stay here on this forest verge and close to this thatched roof while I am far. Now, of more wandering, it has no need. I have done with all my pilgrimage, all my pujas and everything is over. Now I have arrived. Now of more wandering, it has no need. But what is this unfinished business? I must haste back to my father's house. I must go and inform my father. I must haste back to my father's house, which soon will lose one loved, accustomed tread. I'm going there just to say bye-bye and come back. Which will soon lose one loved, accustomed tread and listen in vain for a once cherished voice. So my voice will be missed in my father's palace, but for soon I shall return, nor ever again oneness must sever its recovered bliss. And assure you, once I come back, I will never be separated from you, or fate sunder our lives while life is ours. As long as there is life in us, nothing shall separate us, not even fate. So saying, Savitri mounts her chariot, asks her charioteer to drive back post-haste to her father's palace so that she can report to him and catch the next flight back to the forest. We'll take a break and come back at 10 o'clock.